If you've ever been betrayed by the people who raised you, not strangers, not coworkers, but the ones who tucked you in and signed your school permission slips, then maybe you'll understand why I didn't flinch when she slapped me. Because by the time her hand came down, she'd already taken everything else. They used my name, forged it, took the house Grandpa promised me, filed it with the court like I didn't exist. And the worst part? They made sure no one said a word. The neighbors, the church folks, even the ones who used to smile at me in the grocery store, they all looked away. But what they didn't know was that Grandpa left me more than just memories. He left me the truth. And today, I stopped hiding it. The air outside the Cook County Courthouse still had that sharp spring bite. Not full winter, but enough to cut through my coat and make my fingers ache. I stood near the steps for a minute longer than I needed to, one hand tucked into my pocket where a creased, stained envelope rested, folded in half like a secret too old to say out loud. I hadn't seen my parents in weeks, not since that last dinner where Renata, my mother, looked over her wine glass and asked if I'd finally thought about doing something respectable. That was the tone she always used when she wanted to cut me without raising her voice. I didn't even know there was a hearing today until I got a forwarded email by mistake. I was never supposed to know. So I walked through those heavy glass doors with that in mind, every step echoing too loud, like the building itself didn't want me there. I sat all the way in the back, far right corner, where the shadows met the wall, just close enough to hear everything, far enough to disappear if I had to. Then they walked in like it was their stage, heels snapping against tile like gunfire, hair pulled so tight it looked painful. Renata in her navy blazer, the one she wore to funerals and front rows at church. And Lyle, my father, trailing behind her like he always did, stiff, quiet, never looking up. They didn't glance at me, not once. The judge, Howard Cortez, cleared his throat and called things to order. The kind of man who probably didn't put cream in his coffee. The kind who looked like he didn't take sides unless the law told him to. I expected nothing from that reading, truly. I wasn't named in the will. Not even as a footnote. Just as a witness. Then the clerk read a line that made my whole body go cold. This document includes the signature of Imara S. Reyes as verification. My breath stopped. My palms went damp. I hadn't signed anything. Judge Cortez looked up. Ms. Reyes, is this your signature? I opened my mouth, but my voice was trapped somewhere in my chest. Finally, I said, "No, sir, it's not." Renata exhaled sharply through her nose. "Oh, stop it," she said. "I never signed it," I said again, louder this time. The courtroom went still, that kind of still where it feels like the walls are waiting for something. And then she did. It. Her palm cracked across my face so hard my ears rang. The sound ricocheted off the marble like a shot. "You don't get to ruin this," she hissed. Lyle stood up, stiff as always. "Enough," he said, barely above a whisper. "You're embarrassing yourself." Soraya, my sister, leaned over from the front row with her perfectly polished nails and that wine-glass smile she wore when she wanted to humiliate someone gently. "You always ruin everything," she whispered. Even now, I didn't respond. Fahi. Judge banged his gavel and called a recess. I stood. Slow. My cheek stung, but not from her slap. It was something deeper. Something older. It was every time I sat at the far end of the dinner table. Every birthday I got a gift card instead of a cake. Every time I brought my own folding chair to Thanksgiving. Just in case they forgot again, they'd buried me long before this. I walked out without looking back. Outside, the wind had picked up. It was colder now. I shoved my hands into my coat pocket and felt something solid press against my fingers. I pulled it out. A small metal hair clip. Dull silver. Familiar. I hadn't seen it in years. Grandpa gave it to me on my 15th birthday. Said it wasn't much, but every girl deserves something shiny. I used to wear it every day. Then one day I didn't. But I never got rid of it either. I closed my hand around it and stood there. My cheek still burning. Not from the slap, but from the truth. The kind of truth no one else was ready to face. Not yet. By the time I made it back to my apartment, the sky had gone that familiar gray. Heavy, like it knew something I didn't. I dropped my bag by the door, toed off my shoes, and didn't bother turning on the lights. Just the soft hum of the fridge filled the space, the kind of quiet that somehow felt louder after everything that happened. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring into the dark for a while. Not thinking, not really feeling, just existing. Eventually, I walked to the bathroom and flipped on the mirror light. The fluorescent glow was harsh. I looked older than I did that morning, tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. My cheek was still a little red, but it wasn't the color that stopped me. It was the look in my eyes. Not pain, not even anger. Just that hollow ache of knowing you never really belonged where you thought you did. I pulled the hair clip from my coat pocket and set it on the edge of the sink. The silver had dulled, edges worn smooth with time, but I could still see the tiny number Grandpa had etched inside it. 14. He always said that was my lucky year. The summer I helped him fix the barn roof, haul boxes, bake pies with crusts that never quite came out right. He used to say I'd earned that house one nail at a time. I hadn't thought about that in years. Until today. A knock pulled me out of it. I paused. It was late. Nobody came by unannounced, not in this building. I moved quietly to the door, looked through the peephole. Mr. Avello. I opened it slowly. "Evening, Imara," he said in that gravelly voice of his. Didn't want to call, figured I'd just come by. He held out a small tin of pan dolce, my favorite, the kind with the pink sugar crust, and a manila envelope, creased and soft around the edges. "You want to come in?" I asked. "I'll just stay a minute," he said, stepping inside like his bones had been waiting all day to sit. He eased into the kitchen chair, sighed like it hurt, then handed me the envelope. "Your grandfather gave me this. Told me to hang on to it. Said if things ever got messy, I'd know when to pass it along." I sat down across from him, tin unopened, heart already racing. My fingers trembled as I slid the letter from the envelope. It was dated just 6 weeks, before he passed. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Crooked, slanted, but strong. "Imara," it began. "If this is in your hands, it means they did what I was afraid they might. I want you to know I changed the will. The house is yours. I filed it. With my attorney. You'll find the paperwork under the drawer in the study where we used to keep the old farm ledgers. They may try to say otherwise, but don't let them. You earned this. You stayed. You showed up. That counts for something. Don't let their noise drown out the truth." Grandpa swallowed hard. Mr. Avello was watching me carefully, like he wasn't sure if he should say anything or let the silence speak for itself. "Thank you," I said, voice small. "I didn't know I always hoped he saw what I tried to do." "He did," Mr. Avello nodded. "He told me all the time, called you the quiet backbone. Said you carried more weight than the rest of them combined." He stood slowly, patted his knees like sealing the moment. "You need anything, you knock." When he left, the silence came back. But this time, it didn't feel empty. I turned to the bookshelf and pulled out an old box where I kept odds and ends. Receipts, coupons, a Target return slip from years ago. My name was on it, Imara S. Reyes. The same way I'd signed every lease, every document, every legal form. Not once had I used a TI spread the papers out on the table, comparing them to the forged document from court. Different middle initial, different handwriting, sloppy, like they thought no one would check, like I didn't matter enough to get even that detail, right? I sat there, breathing slow, the fire in my chest steady now, not rage, not sadness, just truth. They tried to erase me, but Grandpa saw me when no one else did. The next morning, I woke up before the sun even touched the blinds. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out, my mind circling the same thought over and over. They didn't just lie, they signed for a dead man. They tried to bury me with him. By 7, I was already dressed, hair pulled back tight, not for looks, but for control. I packed Grandpa's letter into a folder, along with a few of my own documents. Target receipt, lease agreement, old tax return. Everyone signed the same way. Imara S. Reyes, no T, never had been. The Cook County Probate Office sat squat across from an elementary school, which made parking a headache. I ended up on 18th, tucked between two faded yellow lines, and walked. The 2 blocks in a wind that felt colder than it should have. Inside, the building buzzed with fluorescent lights and old carpet. The kind of place where time felt slow on purpose. At the front desk, I stood still, folder clutched in both hands like it could protect me. The clerk behind the plexiglass looked up. Mid-50s maybe, blue tie, thinning hair, name tag that read Morrison. "Hi," I said, clearing my throat. "I'm looking to access the probate file for Luis Reyes. He passed earlier this year. I believe the record's public now." He gave me a long once-over, like he was measuring what I was really asking for. "You a relative?" "Granddaughter," I said. "I'm not listed in the will, just need to view the file. No copies." He tapped a few keys, nodded once, then disappeared through a back door. When he returned, he slid a manila folder through the slot under the glass. "Don't take it apart." I nodded. "Understood." I took it to a small desk near the window and opened the file slowly. Page by page, I flipped through court petitions, dates, witness lists, and then there it was, the will, and there I was. Or some version of me. Imara T. Reyes. I stared at the signature. It looked familiar, but not enough. The lines were forced, loopy where I write sharp, too slow where I move quick. It wasn't mine. I pulled the target receipt from my folder and set it beside the page. My real signature stared back at me. Clean, confident, signed with muscle memory. The fake one looked like someone trying to mimic me from a photo. They didn't even know me well enough to fake me right. My middle name is Simone. I've never used a T in my life. Not in school, not on IDs, not in any legal document. Whoever forged this didn't care enough to get it right. And then I saw it. The notary stamp April 14th. 3 weeks after Grandpa died. My mouth went dry. This wasn't just a lie, it was theft. A theft so careless they dragged a dead man's name into it. Used him as a shield as if he couldn't speak for himself. But he had. In that letter. In the one they didn't know existed. I sat back, pressing my fingertips into the folder, grounding myself in the feel of it. Morrison glanced over at me from behind the glass, maybe thinking I was about to cry. But I didn't. I just closed the file, slid it back through the slot, and whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once. Didn't ask questions. Maybe he saw something in my face that told him it was better not to. Outside, the wind cut even sharper than before. Spring in Chicago still wore its winter coat. I walked back to my car, slow, steady. No calls, no texts, no panic. Just that quiet fire, growing stronger with every step. They forged his name, they forged mine. But what they didn't count on was that I kept everything. And now, the truth was sitting right beside the lie. The street looked smaller than I remembered, narrower. Like the years had folded it inward, tighter with every lie they told. I stood at the bottom of the porch steps, staring at the house I once believed I'd grow old in. Not as a daughter coming home, but as someone returning to reclaim what had been stolen. The lights were on. Warm glow through the living room window. I could see shapes moving behind the curtains, shadows that used to feel like family. I knocked once, firm, no hesitation. The door opened quicker than I expected. Lyle. His jaw tightened the moment he saw me, like my face was an inconvenience. "You've got some nerve showing up here," he said. I didn't flinch. "You've got some nerve pretending I don't exist." He didn't step aside, but he didn't close the door either. Just stood there, torn between pride and fear. Eventually, he moved just enough for me to pass. Inside, everything was the same. The same monogrammed coasters. Same dusty photo frames, lining the hallway. Same couch where I used to fall asleep during movie nights no one really wanted me there for. Soraya was already standing at the archway between the kitchen and living room. Wine glass in hand, polished nails, half a smile, on her face. "You should be grateful we didn't press charges," Lyle said from behind me. I turned to him. "You should be worried I haven't." Soraya's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed cool. "So what's this? Some last desperate grab for attention?" "No," I said, walking into the room, slow and steady. "It's a warning." She scoffed. "A warning?" "You forged a will with a notary stamp dated after Grandpa's death. You submitted documents under a name I've never legally used. You committed fraud. Sloppy, traceable fraud." Lyle didn't move, but Soraya's fingers tensed around her glass. "You've got nothing," she said. "Too fast. I've got metadata. I've got court filings. I've got the original letter Grandpa left with Mr. Avello. I've got every document that proves he changed his will and named me. Not out of pity, but because I earned it. You used my name to steal, but you forgot who he trusted most." The room shifted. Just slightly. The way it does when the ground under someone's feet starts to crack. Soraya's voice dipped lower, bitter. "You think anyone's going to believe you over us?" I looked toward the window. A shadow moved behind the curtain. Mrs. Dalton. The nosy neighbor who watered her porch plants at this exact hour. She was probably listening. "They won't just believe me," I said, voice calm. "They'll believe him." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled it out. A folded napkin. Grandpa. Never used envelopes, always napkins. Always folded twice. Simple. Intentional. I placed it gently on the coffee table. Soraya stared at it like it might explode. "He used to write blessings on these," I said softly. "Birthday notes, advice, quiet reminders I wasn't invisible." Lyle still hadn't said a word. "I've already shared the documents," I continued, "with the court, with the ethics board, with the registrar's office. You're not just fighting me anymore. You're fighting paper trails." "You're making a mistake," Lyle said finally, low, tired. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Don't I?" I asked, stepping closer. "Because from where I'm standing, you're the ones scrambling. You're the ones who thought no one would question a dead man's signature." Soraya moved like she wanted to say something else, another insult, another brush off. But nothing came. Just silence. I looked at both of them, my parents, my sister, people who had spent years making me feel like a shadow in my own family, and for the first time they looked unsure, not furious, not defensive, just afraid. "I'm not here to ask for anything," I said. "I'm here to remind you, this isn't yours, not the house, not his legacy, not my name." I turned to leave. My hand brushed the edge of the napkin one last time as I passed it. "You know what he used to say?" I added, stopping at the doorway. "He said, 'They'll forget what you've done, but not me.'" I looked over my shoulder. "You forgot me, but he didn't," and I walked out. The air outside didn't feel colder this time, just clearer. Like something heavy had finally lifted. The truth had always been mine. They just never thought I'd use it. The sun hadn't even cleared the courthouse roof, but the parking lot was already stirring. Lawyers in sharp suits, reporters clustered near the steps. There was a low buzz in the air, something that didn't quite match the quiet of most probate hearings. But this wasn't going to be quiet. I walked in alone. No entourage, no family trailing behind me in stiff collars and fake smiles. Just me. And the folder in my hand, the one that carried everything they thought I'd never find. The night before, I'd uploaded the affidavit, 10 pages long, every signature mismatch, every metadata discrepancy, the letter from Grandpa, the receipts. I attached the scanned trust from Aunt Marcia, screenshots, timelines, facts, nothing dramatic. Just undeniable. I didn't need drama, I had the truth. Clerk Monroe opened the sealed file in the court's document system at exactly 8:00 a.m. The screen behind the judge flickered once, then filled with my affidavit. Time-stamped, watermarked. Verified. It didn't scream. It didn't need to. It just sat there. Solid. Undeniable. Across the aisle, Soraya leaned toward her attorney, whispering fast. Nolan sat behind her, calm on the outside, sipping coffee like it was any other Tuesday. But I saw it, the slight twitch in his jaw, the pause in his blink. Judge Cortez entered, black robes swaying as he sat. Docket 1A, Reyes Estate Dispute, he said, scanning his notes. We've received an overnight affidavit from Ms. Imara Reyes, submitted under verified identity and notarized. The court accepts the document into the record. Soraya's mouth dropped open. Her lawyer objected, voice tight. Your Honor, we move to exclude the affidavit. It's unsolicited, unverified. You're late, Judge Cortez. Cut in, sharp and final. It meets evidentiary standards. Your objection is noted and overruled. Silence rippled through the room like wind through dry leaves. Then came the ruling. Effective immediately, this court is issuing a temporary freeze on all estate disbursements associated with the contested will of Luis Reyes. The affidavit contains multiple inconsistencies that merit investigation, specifically concerning notarization dates and posthumous filings. A gasp echoed from the gallery. Someone dropped a pen. Soraya stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. This is a circus, she hissed. You're going to believe some pathetic upload over actual family? Her lawyer tried to tug her back. Down, but she wasn't done. She always wanted to be the victim. She's doing this because Grandpa never trusted her. Everyone knows she was a burden. The judge didn't even blink. Counselor, if your client can't remain composed, I'll hold her in contempt. Nolan finally leaned forward, whispering something into Soraya's ear. She jerked away from him like he'd burned her. Don't you dare pretend this isn't your mess too. The cracks were showing, not just in their defense, but in the image they'd built for years. Then the final blow. Counsel, can you confirm how your office received and submitted the most recent amended will? There was a pause, long enough to feel permanent. A junior associate cleared her throat. It was a scanned copy, emailed in. Was it witnessed in person? No answer. That silence was everything. I'm ordering a formal audit and review of the document chain, Judge Cortez said. Until further notice, the submitted will shall not govern any estate action. Just like that, the ground beneath them shifted, and I stood steady. The judge looked at me then. Ms. Reyes, would you like to make a statement? I rose slowly. My voice was even. My hands didn't shake. I reached into my coat and unfolded the napkin Grandpa had written on. His handwriting, sharp and slanted across the center. If they ever silence you, I read aloud, speak here. The truth will know your voice. That was all. I sat down, not as the forgotten one. Not as the daughter they tried to erase, but as someone who chose to speak, and I felt it, across the room. Their fear. Their unraveling. They built their version of the story on silence. But I wasn't quiet anymore. And if you've ever stood alone in a room full of liars and still walked out with the truth, drop a comment. I know I'm not the only one. It had been 4 weeks since the courtroom went still, since Soraya's voice cracked in front of a judge, since Nolan stopped pretending he wasn't part of it, since the masks they wore finally slipped. Hadn't heard a word from Renata, or Lyle, or Soraya. The silence from that side of the family wasn't new, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt hollow. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived in a plain white envelope. No fancy seal, no dramatic wording, just one page. The court's final ruling. The contested will was void. The original trust was reinstated. Imara S. Reyes, sole beneficiary. No fanfare, no apology, just justice, printed in black and white. That same day, a second envelope showed up. No return address, no handwriting. Inside was a card with a watercolor of pine trees on the front. Inside, it said, "Sorry for everything. They never should have dragged you in." No name, but I didn't need one. It smelled faintly of sandalwood and aftershave. Nolan. I didn't call, didn't write back. I folded the card in half and tucked it into the same old tin Grandpa used to keep his checkbooks. I placed it next to the hair clip and the diner napkin Gwen gave me. keepsakes from a war that looked quiet but cut deep. Later that week, I drove back to the house. My house. Now. Legally. The lock hadn't changed. The hallway light still flickered. If you didn't hit the switch just right. I stepped inside and let the door close behind me. It smelled like dust and lemon oil. Time. Waiting. I wandered the kitchen, fingertips brushing the counters. This was where I used to crouch under the table as a kid, hiding from Soraya after I spilled something she'd told me not to touch. My foot bumped something by the lower cabinet. I crouched down, and there it was, wedged behind the baseboard. A yellowed envelope. It wasn't addressed to me. The name scrawled across the front. Soraya. I sat right there on the kitchen floor and opened it with slow, careful hands. Grandpa's handwriting filled the page. Soraya. You always knew how to get what you wanted. I admired that. But I also worried. Because sometimes you use that gift to take, not protect, especially from her. I wish you'd seen her as more than a shadow to step over. She's your sister. She always was. And if she ever comes back here, don't shut her out again. She was never invisible. You just stopped looking. I folded it slowly and leaned my head back against the cabinets. No tears. Just a quiet ache settling behind my ribs. I didn't take anything from the house that day. Just the letter. Across the street, I spotted Mrs. Delgado tending to her violets on the porch. I walked over. She looked up, surprised. Imara Reyes, she said like it was both a memory and a question. You're the quiet one, the one he trusted. I smiled. Still am. She invited me in for coffee and crumbly lemon bars. The same ones Grandpa used to bring home wrapped in napkins. Before I left, she rummaged through her hall closet and pulled out a dusty, cloth-wrapped book. He left this with me years ago, she said. Told me to give it to you someday. It was his sketchbook. Inside, scribbled grocery lists, farm notes, and halfway through, a folded sketch. A little girl sitting cross-legged on the porch steps, hair wild, mouth mid-laugh. He'd drawn me. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. The next morning, I called a local nonprofit, signed over half the estate in Grandpa's name, dedicated to women fighting contested inheritance cases. The rest I kept, not for revenge, not to live rich. I kept the house, not to hold on to pain, but to restore it, room by room. Not as a shrine to grief, but as a quiet place where someone else could start over. I stood on the porch a few nights later, just watching the street breathe beneath me. And in the window's reflection, I didn't see the girl they slapped in court. I saw a woman who outlived their silence. If this story hit somewhere deep, say something below. I know not everyone gets justice in court, but we can remind each other we're not alone. Like, subscribe. Share if you need someone else to hear it too. They erased me on paper, but I came back in ink.